Holden Zarrin had chosen this world because it was forgettable. It had a name, but the residents never bothered with it. No gleaming towers, no orbital rings, no glossy ports where a hero could be recognized from the angle of his jaw. Just wind over scrub grass, a low-slung colony town pressed into a shallow valley, and a ribbon of road that wandered out toward farms, quarries, and the dark line of forest where the native trees grew tall and stubborn. Earth normal gravity and atmosphere. Locals that were friendly and not at all inquisitive. He'd found the town and the people endurable for the few months he'd been here. A good place to have a quiet, peaceful life. Or at least that was the idea. Reality was about to have a laugh at Holden and his plans. He parked his all-terrain vehicle beside the market stalls and leaned his weight into the cane as he stepped down. The left leg followed, more dragged than placed. The muscles that were twisted into a permanent refusal, a shriveled knot that didn't match the rest of him. Strong shoulders, steady hands, the kind of posture you didn't learn in a gym. People here had seen worse injuries. Mining accidents, airlock mistakes, the slow damage of hard work in low gravity. They didn't stare for long, and when they did, Holden's expression was calm enough to send them away. He moved through the small merchant's shop, collected a crate of field rations and a pack of medical patches he didn't really need, and traded credits without haggling. He relied on the support of his cane to supplement the weakness of his left leg. The merchant tried conversation, weather patterns, last week's comms outage, a rumor about a shipment from the Corps being delayed. Holden answered politely, kept his voice low, and gave nothing away. Another stranger in town, a local woman, was saying as Holden moved past, talking to a woman he recognized as a rancher with a spread outside of town. The human woman shot him a suspicious glance, then turned back to her crony. A second newcomer in 1 year. Her emphasis on the word second made Holden think he was likely the first of that pair of newcomers. Outside, the air smelled faintly of machine oil and cold stone. He loaded the supplies into the back of his vehicle with military efficiency, then shut the hatch and paused with his hand on the latch, breathing once through his nose. His data feed chimed. He almost ignored it. Almost. But years of training didn't let almost live in his bones. He lifted his wrist, and a small hollow pane shimmered above the skin of his forearm. Messages scrolled down in neat stacks. He pointed at the icon for Arido Mass, his controller from his active duty days. Arido's video message was recorded. Just want to say howdy, my bro. I screened this list down from over 1,000 messages. The whole galaxy is still looking for you. Keep your head down. Below that, a dozen requests with bright, hungry subject lines. Speaking tour invite. Hero of the Freighter Rescue. Exclusive Doka series offer. Confidential. Matrimonial proposal. High profile. And then, of course, the legal trash. People who believe they could sue a man into becoming a myth that belonged to them. Holden's jaw tightened as he flicked past it all. Then he saw the one message that made the hairs on his arms rise. No sender ID. No subject. No body. Just an empty packet. His wrist device flashed a small confirmation. Acknowledged. And beneath it, worse. Auto receipt sent. Holden's thumb froze above the interface. He could feel his heart shift gears. Empty packets were never empty. They were pings. They were hooks. They were a way to make a ghost answer the door. He closed the hollow pane and stared down the street. The colony town's main road was a broad strip of packed composite with puddles from last night's rain. A few locals drifted between stalls. A pair of kids chased each other around a water barrel. Nothing looked wrong. That was how wrong always started. He drove to the tavern anyway, because routine was camouflage. Also, after a life of military brotherhood, Holden had discovered that solitude had its moments. Those moments were best separated from each other with the company of his fellow sentient beings. The Copper Finch, the name painted on the door in cheerful fading letters, was one of 2 taverns in town. Inside, it was warm in a way only old wood and purified air could manage. Low music hummed from an ancient reproduction jukebox, a tiny call-out to humanity's cradle, the planet Earth. A few miners sat near the bar. They radiated the exhaustion and relief of a good day's work done. A woman sat at a table in a shadowy corner, wearing a stiff air of aloof like a costume. But to Holden's quick analysis, she was awash in caution, perhaps even fear. The woman, beautiful but shrunken into her battered and shapeless old coat, like she was hiding in it, deliberately did not meet his eyes. Holden took a table toward the back, where he could see the entrance and the window and the reflections in the polished metal behind the bar. He set his cane against his chair, within easy reach. He ordered something simple. He let his shoulders drop. A woman he recognized slid into the chair across from him, as if the space had been waiting for her. Her clothing was too tight in some places, and too loose in others. She was a local that the other locals avoided or ignored. Holden had managed to avoid her, up until now. She wore a dress that tried too hard to look effortless, and her smile was practiced, bright at the edges, empty in the middle. Her eyes were the only honest thing about her. Tired. "New guy," she said, leaning forward. "You've been avoiding me, handsome." Holden met her gaze without flinching. "I hope you didn't take it personally." Her laugh was soft, but it had a cracked note. "Why would a man like you be in a place like this?" Holden's mouth twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. She was taking a dig at his disability. He'd been insulted by the very best, and those were just the guys in his old unit. "I heard the view was spectacular." She reached out, fingertips hovering near his hand on the table, reading him the way people did when they wanted something from you. "I'm available," she said, voice dropping, "for the right price." Holden's eyes flicked, not to her, but past her. He saw the man near the bar who watched them too closely. He saw two others who shifted like dogs scenting blood. He looked back at the woman gently. "No," he said. "Thank you." Her smile faltered, and for a second something raw flashed across her face. Anger, humiliation, fear. Then it was gone, buried under habit. "You sure?" she pressed. "I'm sure," Holden said. Soft, firm, not unkind. That, apparently, was the problem. A chair scraped. Boots thudded. The man by the bar approached with two thick-shouldered friends. He had the posture of someone used to being obeyed, and the eyes of someone who thought he deserved it. The woman leaned away. "That's my girl," he said, and his voice carried the lazy menace of a man who'd never been stopped. Holden didn't move. "She's the belle of the ball." The man smiled wider, showing teeth. "You think you're funny? You know, cripple, you don't want the woman. Fine. But you gotta pay anyway. Call it a newcomer's tax." An exploited woman drumming up business was one thing. A man who exploited women hit right on Holden's sore spot. The thug didn't know it, but Holden was a part of a special forces unit that rescued trafficked sentient beings. In his last campaign, his leg had been irrevocably shattered, but that didn't mean the mission was over. For him, the mission would never be over. Holden's left hand rested flat on the table. His right hovered near the cane. His tone stayed even. The thug should have noted the flat death stare on Holden's face. "Walk away." The men laughed. The woman across from Holden stared down at her hands. Her shoulders tightened, like she was bracing for a familiar kind of storm. The pimp leaned in. "Or what?" Holden sighed, and it wasn't dramatic. It was simply the sound of a man disappointed in the predictability of cruelty. Then he stood. The first thug swung. Holden's cane snapped up like a baton and cracked against the man's wrist with precise, efficient motion. The thug howled and stumbled back. The second lunged, trying to tackle him around the waist. Holden pivoted on his good leg, shifting his weight in a way that kept pressure off the ruined one, and brought the cane down hard on the back of the man's neck. Not enough to kill, but enough to make him see stars and drop to his knees. The pimp went for Holden's face with the jagged neck of a broken bottle. Holden caught his wrist mid-swing. For a moment, their eyes met. Holden's were calm. The pimp's were startled because he expected fear and found none. Holden twisted. The bottle shattered against the floor, and the pimp's arm bent just far enough to make him squeal. Holden, in a last act of restraint, pushed the man away. People backed away. Someone shouted. A table tipped. The thug jumped to his feet. He had been humiliated in front of his gang, and worse, in front of the entire tavern. Only death would satisfy him now. A man charged from behind. Without taking his eyes from the man in front of him, Holden hooked his cane around the man's neck and yanked hard. As Holden yanked the man forward and somersaulting into a table, the big thug charged. Holden stepped back, just enough to avoid the lumbering oaf's outstretched arms. That was when the knife went in, a sharp, hot bite between his ribs, sliding under his shoulder blade. Holden's breath vanished, as if someone had pulled out with the blade. His vision flared white. He turned, half stumbling, and saw the woman, the one he'd rejected, staring at him with wide, terrified eyes. Her hand shook around the handle. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and Holden understood in a flash that it wasn't hatred. It was survival. She was trapped in a system that punished defiance, and he had become the proof that defiance was possible. So they had made her crush it. Holden tried to speak, but his mouth filled with copper. His knees buckled. He hit the floor hard, came skittering away. The world narrowed into sound. The pimp's laughter, the scrape of boots, the thick wet thump of Holden's heartbeat in his ears. The men approached, shadows falling over him. "Teach you," the pimp said, and lifted his boot. Holden waited for pain. Instead, warmth flooded through his back like sunlight pouring into a wound. The knife wound sealed itself. He could feel it, his flesh healing and knitting itself back together. It was the strangest experience he had ever had. The shock receded as if someone had reached into his nervous system and turned the volume down. His lungs filled, his heart steadied. The draining exhaustion of the fight, his body's desperate accounting of energy spent, washed away. Holden blinked, stunned. He pushed himself up. The pimp's boot came down, and Holden rolled aside easily, springing to his feet with sharpness that didn't belong to a man who'd been stabbed moments ago. The bullies stared. Holden picked up his cane. "Last chance," he said, voice quiet again. "Walk away." They didn't, so he ended it. He drove forward with the cane like a spear, cracked one man across the jaw, swept another's leg with a pivot that made his bad leg scream. But the scream was muted, distant, like a memory instead of present agony. He used his momentum and training to drop them fast, decisive strikes aimed to incapacitate rather than destroy. The pimp swung wildly. Holden stepped in, caught the man's collar, and slammed him into the edge of the bar hard enough to rattle the glasses. The man limply slumped to the floor. The room went still. The sheriff arrived with 2 deputies, breathless and wide-eyed, taser drawn. He took one look at Holden standing over the groaning pile of men and the woman with the knife still in her hand, and let out a sound that was half relief, half exhausted frustration. "For once," the sheriff muttered, "someone finally stopped them." Holden's hands trembled slightly as the adrenaline faded. He stared at his bloody shirt. He could feel skin beneath the torn fabric, intact, unbroken. "Press charges?" the sheriff asked. Holden met his gaze. "Yes." The sheriff nodded like a man receiving a gift. The deputies hauled the bullies up, snapping restraints around wrists and ankles. The woman with the knife looked like she might collapse, but the sheriff guided her gently aside and spoke to her in a low voice Holden couldn't hear. She was sobbing. Holden did not stay for thanks. On his way out, the woman with the long blonde hair, who was hiding in her coat, was gone. He drove home under a sky that had turned the color of bruised steel. His mind was racing and churning over the miracle in the bar. A near-fatal stab wound. Just gone. Healed in real time. No species or culture he knew of had technology like that. By all rights, he should be near death on a not-that-often-mopped barroom floor. His cabin sat a few kilometers outside town, tucked near the edge of a shallow ravine where a creek ran cold and clear. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. A single-story structure with reinforced walls, a small porch, solar collectors angled toward the pale sun, and a wind turbine that creaked softly in the evening breeze. He was off-grid. Of course. This tiny corner of nowhere had no grid. He parked, limped inside, and stood in the quiet. He peeled off his shirt. Blood smeared his fingers. There should have been a wound. There was nothing, only smooth skin and the faintest trace of warmth where injury had been. Holden stared at himself in the mirror for a long time. "Advanced tech," he murmured. Or he didn't have a word he trusted for what it felt like. He grabbed a clean shirt, returned to the vehicle, and started unloading supplies. That was when the tarp in the back shifted. Holden froze. His cane was in his hand before he realized it. He didn't point like a threat, but his stance changed, subtle, prepared. The tarp lifted, and a woman's face appeared beneath it. Young, blonde, too pale, as if she hadn't seen sunlight in days. Her eyes were bright with fear, but there was something else too, intelligence, and a kind of stubborn hope that had survived too much. He recognized the coat, battered, shapeless, and sheltering a frightened woman. "Please," she said, voice breaking on a word. Don't turn me in." Holden stared at her. He could have asked questions. He could have demanded explanations. He could have done 100 cautious things. Instead, he offered his hand. "Come inside," he said. "It's cold." Her eyes widened as if she hadn't expected kindness to be a real option. Slowly, she slid out from under the tarp, trembling. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of herbs and old books. A kettle sat on the stove. The furniture was simple and sturdy. The place was quiet in a way that felt deliberately built. The woman hovered near the door like she might bolt. Holden took a step back to give her space. "I'm Holden," he said. "You hungry?" She blinked. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Yes." "Okay," he said, as if this was the simplest thing in the universe. "Sit wherever you like." She could have been a rabbit, cornered and defenseless. He kept his distance, trying to show no ill intent, to be as cautious as she was, yet making no effort to run away, could only mean her options were very limited. He moved about the kitchen with a practiced ease, pulling out food, setting water to boil, slicing preserved vegetables, warming stew in a pan. He didn't ask her to talk while her hands were shaking. He didn't crowd her with questions. After a few minutes, the sound of cooking did what it always did. It made safety feel possible. She sat at the table, hugging her arms around herself. "My name is Althea," she said finally. The name sounded like something soft dropped into still water. Holden nodded. "Althea." Her gaze flicked to his cane, to the way he favored his left leg, then away again, as if looking too closely might invite trouble. "I'm being hunted," she said, "by a corporation. Regina. They have resources." Holden didn't react outwardly, but the name landed in his mind like a weight. Regina Corporation wasn't small time. It was a massive entity that did everything from colonization contracts to biotech research to security consulting. The kind of corporation that could buy laws in bulk. The Intelligence Corps had declared a Regina Corporation investigation to be no joy. Nothing found to condemn or to clear them from suspicion. Althea swallowed. "I hacked them," she said quickly. "Too quickly. I got into accounts. Took numbers. Information. If they catch me, they'll bury you," Holden finished quietly. She flinched, then nodded. Holden set a bowl of stew in front of her, along with bread and a mug of warm tea. He didn't call her out. Not yet. Not when her hands were shaking as she lifted the spoon. "You're safe here tonight," he said. Althea's eyes filled suddenly, and she blinked hard like she hated herself for being seen. "You don't even know me." Holden sat across from her, keeping his posture relaxed. "I know you're scared," he said. "And I know you didn't come here to hurt me. And maybe more? Did you?" "No, that's ridiculous." "Did I what?" she asked, eating a buttered slice of bread with a bit of obvious relish. Never mind. It's too absurd." He watched her shoulders loosen by a fraction. They ate. They spoke carefully, circling truths like wary animals. Holden mentioned he'd served in security work a while ago. Althea mentioned she'd been on the run for years. Neither gave details. Neither pressed. When the meal was done, Holden showed her a small guest bedroom. Clean sheets, a thick quilt, a lamp that cast warm light. She seemed to be taking in every detail of the room. "You can lock the door," he said, "if it helps." "It's so cozy, so nice," she said. Holden realized she probably didn't get decent accommodations very often. Althea looked at him, her face artlessly casual, but with a slight tremor in her voice. "And you?" "I'll be in my room," he said. "Down the hall." She stared at him, as if waiting for the moment his kindness turned into a trap. When it didn't, she nodded and stepped inside. Holden went to his own room, closed the door, and leaned against it. He pulled out his evening medication kit, pain suppressants, anti-inflammatory shots, nerve blockers. He'd built the routine around his injury, the way you built rituals around grief. He hesitated with the injector in his hand. Tonight, the pain felt duller. His back, where he'd been stabbed, felt normal. Too normal. He lay on his bed and stared up at the ceiling. Analysis was part of his training. Pattern recognition. Threat assessment. The cold math of survival. Althea was not a simple hacker. And whatever had happened in the tavern, it didn't feel like a med patch or a hidden drone. It had felt like someone reaching into the very idea of injury and undoing it. Sometime after midnight, Holden heard soft footsteps. His eyes opened instantly. The door eased open a crack. A sliver of light fell across the floor. A shadow, slim, hesitant, paused at the threshold. Althea stood there, looking at him. Holden kept his breathing slow, pretended sleep. He felt her presence like static in the air. Not dangerous, exactly, but intense, focused. After a long moment, she retreated, closing the door without a sound. Holden lay awake until dawn. When morning came, light spilled to the cabin windows. Holden sat up and stopped. The pain wasn't there. Not the usual grinding ache in his left leg. Not the sharp flare in his hip. Not the nerve burn that crawled down his shin like fire. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. He waited for imbalance. His weight settled evenly. He took a step. The left leg moved, stronger, steadier, almost whole. It was a healthy color. It was new flesh like a baby. Holden's breath caught. His hand gripped the bed frame. He looked down at his leg, at the shape beneath the fabric. It didn't feel like a prosthetic. It felt like his. His pulse thundered as realization snapped into place with terrifying clarity. 2 miracles. A stabbed wound that just went away. Now a crippled leg made new, restored. He left his cane by the bed and walked to the kitchen. Althea was there, humming quietly to herself as she cooked. Her hair was loose, catching the light in pale gold. She wore one of Holden's spare shirts, too big, sleeves rolled up. For the first time, her face didn't look like a cornered animal. His breath caught in his throat. She was classically beautiful, less haunted, more unguarded. She looked almost happy. "Good morning," she said brightly, turning with a pan in her hands. "I hope you don't mind. I made eggs, and there was this root vegetable in your pantry, and I think—" Holden leaned against the doorway and watched her. The warmth in the room was normal, domestic, human, and yet his body was screaming with the impossible. Althea glanced at him and faltered. "What?" Holden's voice came out low. "Careful. My leg." Her eyes widened. He stepped forward, slow, as if approaching a wild creature. "It doesn't hurt," he said. "It works." Althea's mouth parted. Her hands tightened on the pan handle until her knuckles whitened. Holden studied her face. In the tavern, someone had given him a miracle healing without his knowledge. Here, in the night, someone had watched him sleep. He said the words gently, but they landed like a stone. "You did it." Althea's shoulders sagged as if a string inside her snapped. "I didn't mean—" Her voice broke. You were hurting. You were kind to me. I couldn't." Holden held up a hand. Not to stop her, to steady the moment. "I'm not angry." Althea stared at him as if she'd been slapped. "Then why do you look like that?" Because he was terrified. Because he knew what the universe did to miracles. It monetized them, weaponized them, caged them. Because he could already imagine the corporate labs, the contracts, the people smiling while they cut her open with paperwork instead of knives. Holden exhaled slowly. "Because I need to tell you something," he said. "And I need you to tell me the truth." Althea's chin trembled. "Okay." Holden looked down at his hands. "Then back up." "I don't want it." Althea blinked. "What?" "My leg," Holden said, and his voice went rough around the edges. "I don't want it healed." The word seemed to hit her like a physical blow. I don't understand," she whispered. Holden stepped closer. "That injury is part of who I am now," he said. "It's what I paid. It's what I carry. It reminds me why I left, why I can't go back." Althea's tears spilled. But it hurts you. Yes, Holden said, and I accepted it. Althea stared at him like he was speaking a language she'd never heard. Her people, whatever they were, had lived and died hunted for what they could do. Humans had chased them for centuries, for youth and immortality. She had been taught that everyone wanted healing. She had never met someone who didn't. How did you know? She whispered. How did you know it was me? Simple deduction. In the tavern. A major wound healed nearly instantly. Then my leg healed. Something doctors and scientists said wasn't possible. And you were there both times. No tech exists that can do this. Simple deduction, Althea. As insane as it sounds. Althea's breath shuddered. I'm from Earth, but I'm not human, she said quietly. Holden didn't flinch. I figured. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand like she was angry at herself. My people were adjacent to Homo sapiens, she said. We were made, some say by the Creator, some say by evolution, some say by accident. Legends name us angels, guardians. It doesn't matter. What matters is what we can do. Holden waited, silent. Althea looked at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. We can heal, she said. Bodies, wounds, disease. We can grow what was lost. She swallowed. We can also keep people alive longer than they should be, if we're forced. Holden's stomach turned. They hunted us for it, she continued, voice trembling with an old grief. Kings, corporations, cults, anyone who wanted to live forever. We ran. We hid. We chose death over cages. One by one, my family, my friends, everyone. Her eyes lifted, shining. I thought I was the last. Holden's throat tightened. Regina Corporation, he said. They found you. Althea nodded. They want me alive, she whispered. They don't care what it costs. She swallowed. It started on Earth, she said, long before anyone had warp corridors or colony registries, when humans still looked at the stars like they were gods. Holden's gaze softened. That's a long time. Althea nodded. Humans were brilliant even then, she said. Too brilliant. Too hungry. They were advancing faster than they were learning mercy. Her voice grew distant, half reciting. My people lived alongside them in secret. Guardians, healers, keepers of balance. Call us what you want. We weren't better. We were just different. We could touch the body's pattern and coax it back into harmony. We could feel pain like a temperature. We could quiet it or amplify it. Her fingers tightened around the seed. We could extend life. Holden's jaw set. He could already see where the story went. Humans found out, Althea said, not all of them, but enough. And the ones who did were the ones who wanted more than they wanted good. She looked up at him, eyes shining. At first it was prayers and offerings. Then it became cages and knives. They called it science. They called it salvation. They called it destiny. Holden's hands tightened around his mug. Regina, he murmured. Althea gave a small, bitter laugh. Regina is just a modern costume for an ancient appetite. She stared into the fire. The legend says that my people gathered in one place, the last time they ever dared to gather, a valley near what humans now call the Aegean, a place where the land's geomagnetic veins were strong, where the world's crust sang louder underfoot. She lifted the seed slightly. They brought the convergent stone. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, like the air had thickened with history. Althea continued, voice turning mythic, the words shaped by generations. The convergent stone was grown, not built, a lattice of living minerals seeded into the planet's deep mantle long ago, an anchor to something beyond ordinary space. It resonated with what my people called the luminous thread. Holden stared at her with a look that was equal parts curiosity and disbelief. The luminous thread. Althea nodded solemnly, then gave him a quick, apologetic glance. I know. It sounds like fairy tale physics. The thread, Althea said, wasn't a road. It was a tone, a frequency that reality itself recognizes. The legend says the universe has veins, like a living thing. The thread is one of them. Holden exhaled slowly, as if filing this away under impossible but relevant. Althea's voice grew quieter. When the hunters came, kings, warlords, priests, early corporations with different names, my people realized they couldn't keep living half-hidden. Humanity was growing too fast, too cruel, too hungry. The legend says humans weren't evil by nature. She met Holden's eyes. But power without restraint, it turns appetite into religion. Holden didn't argue. He'd fought enough monsters that wore human faces. So, my people chose exile, Althea whispered. Not a ship, not a colony. Something stranger. Althea stared at it as if listening. They activated the portal during a geomagnetic storm, she said. When lightning stitched the sky and the world's magnetic poles wobbled, the convergent stone resonated with the luminous thread, and the valley became thin. Holden's voice was careful. Thin. Between here and elsewhere, she said. Between time and distance. Between what humans call matter and what my people call the breath. Holden made a small sound. The breath. I warned you, she said, almost smiling again. Science fantasy gobbledygook. Keep going, he said. Althea swallowed. The legend says they stepped through, not into hyperspace, not into warp, into a place between places where the thread runs bright. Her eyes gleamed. They became travelers of the vain ways. They left her behind like a shed skin. But you were left behind? Abandoned? You didn't go with them? Holden asked. Althea shook her head, eyes moist. I was so young. It was so long ago. I can heal my body, extend my life, but my brain is not capable of retaining all the memories of all that time. Amazing, Holden whispered, feeling the epic sweep of time in her story. So here we are, light years away from our home planet, hunted by bad guys from all over the galaxy. Holden's jaw set. They won't have you. Althea let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Why? We don't know each other. I'm sorry, but I've been deceived so many times. Holden's eyes went distant, to a freighter in his memory. Metal corridors, screams, cages stacked like cargo, alien traffickers with cold eyes and eager hands. Rescuing people is kind of my thing, he said. And because he hesitated, then said anyway, you saved my life in the tavern. You risked exposure and capture to help a man you didn't even know. Holden pointed as his new left leg. This happened rescuing people. My team, our unit name and our organization is so secret, so classified, that I can't say it even today. Althea sat slowly, caught up in his story. We were taking down a trafficking organization. We took them down, I should say. 1,000 people rescued. 1,000 more retrieved from slavery. The people behind it arrested, properties and assets seized. In a final desperate act, the traffickers tried to run. They had a cargo ship with people as freight, people as merchandise. I know this story, Althea said. It was all over the news. Even a refugee like me heard of it. You are that Holden Zarrin. Holden nodded. The trafficker's last stand gave me this leg. Althea reached out a hesitant hand, put on his, you are hiding. You just want peace and to be left alone. A tear rolled down her cheek. And then I showed up, probably with the world following me. I ruined it. I ruined your plans. Holden gently wiped her tears with his fingers. When it comes, and it will, it won't be your fault, Althea. I accidentally sent them an invite myself. My best guess is it will be the remnants of the traffickers' gang, out for revenge, and probably soon. Althea blinked, pressed her cheek into his fingers. A small, broken smile appeared. Or Regina Corp after me. Maybe we have a competition to see whose enemies arrive first. Holden's chuckle was genuine. Then his wrist alarm screamed. His cabin sensor grid lit up his peripheral display. Motion signatures, engine profiles, a convoy approaching fast along the dirt track that led to his property. Holden's body went instantly still. Althea's head snapped toward the window, fear flooding back into her face. They found me. Or, they found me, Holden said. If it's a remnant of the traffickers' gang, they'll kill me and take you as a surprise bonus. She visibly blanched at this, her face turning pale. Holden crossed the room to a wall panel and tapped a concealed switch. The cabin hummed. Outside, shimmering light flickered into being. A translucent dome that rose from the ground and arced over the cabin like a bubble of clear glass. An energy shield, humming at a frequency that made the air feel charged. Althea stared. You planned for this. Holden didn't look at her. He was watching the sensor feed. I planned for trouble, he said. It tends to follow people like us. The convoy crested the hill, 3 armored ground vehicles, low and angular. Drones buzzed overhead like insects. A sleek corporate shuttle hovered behind them, its thrusters stirring dust into spirals. Holden's stomach went cold as he saw the insignia on the lead vehicle. Regina. But there was something else, too. Another mark, half scraped away. A symbol he recognized from old briefs. The remnants of the trafficking ring he had shattered. They teamed up, he murmured. Or they sold information. Althea's voice was small. They'll take me. No, Holden said, and there was ire in the word. They won't. The vehicle stopped at the edge of the shield. A corporate agent stepped out. Crisp uniform, 2 clean boots. He carried a handheld projector and the confident posture of someone used to having the universe sign on dotted lines. His voice came through the cabin's external audio feed, smooth as polished steel. Holden Zarrin, he called, and Althea Alshan. We know you're inside. Althea flinched at her full name in his mouth. Holden's eyes narrowed. They knew too much. They'd traced the empty packet. They'd tracked the auto receipt back to his device. The hook had worked. We're authorized to retrieve corporate property, the agent continued. You can make this easy. Open the shield. Hand her over. You'll be compensated. Your legal matters can... Holden's hand clenched into a fist. Property, he muttered. Anger flared in his chest, red and hot. This was exactly what he had spent his life fighting, and now it was on his doorstep. Althea stepped back, trembling. Holden, I can run. I can... No, Holden said firmly. He turned to her. You're done running alone. Her eyes searched his face. Why are you doing this? Holden hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I did it for the people on that freighter, he said. His eyes were questioning as they looked at her. And because you're the kind of person to risk everything to help a stranger. And now I'm doing it for me. Her eyes were wide with surprise for just an instant. Then a look of determination settled on her face. Outside, the corporate agent's voice sharpened. Last warning. The shield will be breached. You have 60 seconds. Holden swung the doors of a cabinet open. Althea hadn't even noticed the tall knotted wood furnishing. Neatly organized in rows were mounted Holden's tools of death and mayhem, an arsenal that shouted a loud no to those who considered sentient beings as profit centers. Althea recognized them as weapons and various types of grenades and explosives, but she had no idea what any of them did. Holden strapped on his gear with the ease of muscle memory. He didn't look like a retired man now. He looked like what he was, a trained and battle-hardened Special Forces operative. Althea stared at him. You can't fight them. Not like this. Holden's jaw tightened. I'm not fighting to win, he said. I'm fighting to buy time. For what? Holden glanced at the corner of the room where a low cabinet sat. Ordinary, rustic, homey. He walked to it and pressed a hidden latch. The cabinet slid aside, revealing stairs that led down into darkness. Holden gestured to her to follow him. One of the reasons I chose this place was the caverns underneath. The caverns run to the mines. The mines run to town. We can get help from the sheriff. The corporate agent's electronic broadcast broke through the air again. Local law enforcement has their own problems. Seems their prisoners escaped and are on the run. So don't expect any help from town. You have 30 seconds to surrender on good terms. New plan, Holden said, a swear word under his breath. There's an old survey station in the mountains. Abandoned. It has a comm array that can reach the wider net without pinging local relays. From there, we can summon my old team for help. Unspoken, but they were both aware that it would take days for even the closest allies to arrive. We may be in for a few rough days, Holden said. Outside, the corporate agent raised a device. The air around the shield began to shimmer, an attempt to overload it. Let's go, Holden shouted, grabbing her hand and dragging her with him down the stairs. An overpowering smell of ozone, a large crackle of tortured energy. Then something exploded. Aletha screamed. Holden pulled her close, shushing her gently. This was not to be romantic. It was to help her feel grounded. But for the moment, he noticed that she felt good in his arms. The cabinet above them automatically slid back, covering the entrance to the stairs. The hidden staircase dropped steeply beneath the cabin, carved directly into ancient stone rather than built by human hands. The steps were uneven, worn smooth not by boots, but by ages of slow geological movement. As Holden and Althea descended, the air changed, cooler, heavier, tinged with a faint metallic sweetness, like rain falling on warm circuitry. The tunnel opened into a vast natural cavern, and Holden stopped instinctively. The space was enormous, easily the size of City Plaza, yet its proportions felt wrong. The ceiling arched in sweeping curves that didn't follow gravity the way rock should. It was as if the cavern had been shaped by flowing energy rather than erosion. Dim light filled the chamber, without any obvious source. "I have a rough idea of the layout," Holden said, pulling Althea along by her hand. "But I haven't been here long enough to really map these caverns." "They can't find us now, right?" Althea asked. "They can't find the secret entrance?" "They'll run scans, and they'll find it within 5 minutes. We have that long before they're down here." Veins of crystalline mineral threaded through the walls like frozen lightning, glowing softly in shifting hues of blue, violet, and pale gold. The light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, casting moving shadows that made the stone seem almost alive. Althea felt it immediately. "This place," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely, as though the cavern absorbed sound and returned it slightly altered. "It sits on a convergence point." The ground beneath them wasn't solid stone alone. Smooth, glass-like formations protruded from the floor in organic shapes. Spirals, ridges, and shallow pools of translucent mineral that shimmered like liquid, though they were perfectly still. Some of the formations resembled petrified waves, frozen mid-motion, as if time itself had hardened in place. Faint lines of luminous energy, requiring close focus to see, drifted through the air like slow, moving currents in water. They intersected, diverged, and rejoined, forming an invisible lattice that extended into the depths of the caverns beyond. They were running down the strange tunnel. Holden led them at speed, but caution in the unfamiliar surroundings kept them from going at top speed. The deeper tunnels branching from the main cavern did not follow predictable directions. Some sloped downward into darkness. Others curved upward in smooth arcs, defying gravity's logic. One passage appeared to twist slightly as they watched, as though perspective itself was uncertain there. In the center of the cavern stood a formation unlike the rest, a ring of tall crystalline pillars arranged in a perfect circle. Each pillar was smooth and slightly translucent, glowing faintly with the same golden hue as the convergent stone. Althea approached slowly, almost reverently. "This is old," she said softly. "Older than the colony, older than human settlement on this world." Her hand hovered near one of the pillars, and as she drew close, the crystal brightened in response, like a living thing recognizing her presence. Holden exhaled quietly. He realized then that his cabin had never been just a random hiding place. It had been built unknowingly above something far older, something connected to the same ancient network that once carried Althea's people away from Earth. Behind them, distant echoes rolled to the cavern like slow thunder, not sound to collapse, but vibrations traveling through the stone. Above, enemies might be searching. Down here, however, the caverns felt like a different reality altogether. A hidden crossroads between worlds. Not a refuge. A doorway waiting to be opened. The thunder changed. It sharpened into something mechanical. Footsteps. Boots striking stone. Holden's instincts reacted before conscious thought caught up. His head snapped toward the tunnel entrance. "They found us," he said quietly. Althea's breath hitched. "How?" "Track my comms. Or yours. Or they never stopped scanning this area." His voice hardened. "Doesn't matter now." He moved quickly, positioning himself between her and the tunnel. The glow from the crystalline pillars reflected in his eyes as he drew his pulse emitter and a compact combat blade from his belt. The first mercenary burst into the chamber seconds later, weapon raised, visor scanning. Then another, and another. Corporate armor, trafficker insignias, a lethal partnership of greed and revenge. The leader stepped forward last. Holden's jaw tightened instantly. He knew that face. Scarred cheek, cold eyes, a smile like a knife. Kelvaros, one of the alien trafficker commanders from the freighter raid, the only one who had escaped, a rogue Varithi military officer, wanted by his people and the Human Alliance. Varos profited and lived well from the agony of trafficked beings, until Holden's campaign tore down Varos's empire. The Varithi are a predatory, highly adaptive humanoid species evolved from a world of extreme environmental instability, a planet where seismic shifts, toxic storms, and scarce resources shaped a culture built on dominance and survival at any cost. Physically, they resemble tall, lean humans at first glance, but the illusion breaks quickly. Their skin is smooth and slightly iridescent, shifting subtly between dark bronze and oily black, depending on the light, like polished obsidian. Instead of pores, their skin contains fine crystalline lattices that help regulate toxins and temperature. "You," Varro said softly, voice full of venom. He towered over his mercenaries and the Regina troops that backed him up. "I searched the stars for you, Zarrin." Holden didn't respond. He simply shifted his stance. Balanced. Ready? Varos's gaze flicked past him to Althea, and something like hunger flashed across his face. "2 prizes in one day," he murmured. "The hero who ruined my empire, and the angel who will make me immortal." "Not happening," Holden said. Varos smiled wider. "Kill him," he ordered. The chamber erupted into violence. Pulse fire streaked through the glowing air. Holden moved like a storm given human shape. He dove behind a pillar, fired twice. 2 mercenaries dropped instantly, stunned by precision hits to neural junctions. A third rushed him with a shock blade. Holden pivoted, catching the man's wrist, slamming him into the crystal pillar hard enough to knock the air from his lungs before striking with a clean, disabling blow. Holden staggered as another shot grazed his shoulder. Before pain could even bloom, warmth surged through him. Althea's power. The wound sealed instantly. His strength returned like a switch had been flipped. Holden surged forward again, unstoppable now, his training and her healing working in perfect, silent harmony. He disarmed attackers with brutal efficiency. Strikes to nerves, joints, helmets. Each movement precise, controlled. Lethal only when absolutely necessary. Holden was unstoppable. A juggernaut of precise violence. Varos watched with growing rage. "You always fight like this," he snarled. "Like you think you can save everyone." Holden didn't answer. He was too busy ending the fight. Within moments, the mercenaries lay scattered across the chamber floor. Only Varos remained. He backed toward the cavern wall, breathing hard, eyes wild. "You don't understand," he hissed. "I will not be defeated by a cripple and a ghost." Holden stepped forward. "I'm neither," he said quietly. Varos laughed, a broken, desperate sound, then died proving it. He slammed his hand onto a detonator strapped to his chest. Holden's eyes widened. "Explosive," he shouted. The ancient chamber reacted instantly. The crystal pillars flared with blinding light. The blast detonated. The explosion roared to the cavern, amplified by the enclosed space. Stone shattered. Pillars cracked. Shockwaves slammed into Holden like a physical wall, throwing him backward. He hit the ground hard. Rocks rained down. Varos and the remaining attackers vanished beneath a collapsing avalanche of stone. The chamber began to die. Ceiling fractures spread like lightning. Entire sections broke loose. "Holden!" Althea cried. He forced himself up, ears ringing, vision swimming. "I'm here," he rasped. Another slab crashed down nearby, sending a shockwave through the floor. The exit tunnel was already partially collapsed. They ran. Holden grabbed Althea's hand, pulling her through falling debris. His body took impacts that would have shattered bone, each one instantly undone by her desperate healing. Behind them, the ancient chamber groaned like a dying giant. They dove through the narrowing tunnel, just as the cavern ceiling gave way entirely. The collapse thundered behind them, a deep, final sound that shook the earth above. Dust and silence followed. For a long moment, Neither of them moved. They lay on the cold stone, breathing hard, alive, barely. Holden realized that Althea was weeping. It was the inconsolable cry of a lost child. He reached for her. "Sweetheart," he said, not regretting the word choice. He sat and pulled her to him. Althea nodded weakly, tears streaking her dusty face. "The chamber," she whispered. "It's gone. I'm alone now. No family, no heritage." Holden shook his head slowly. "No," he said. She looked up at him, teary eyes showing a belief in him that was new. He looked back toward the collapsed tunnel, where faint golden light still pulsed through cracks in the stone. Who is to say that this is the only convergence point? There must be more like the one your tribe used. On Earth, right? We start there. Althea smiled up at him. It was a warm feeling of hope, something completely alien to her, up to now. She cried again, but these were happy tears. For the first time since the explosion, Holden allowed himself to close his eyes for just a second. Not from exhaustion, but from relief. They had survived. And survival, he knew, was always the first step toward destiny. Later, Holden and Althea, holding hands and engaging in a lively conversation as they walked to the caverns, came upon a crew of night shift miners. The surprised miners were happy to show them the shaft that lead to town. They had to wake the sheriff from his sleep. The sheriff kept his grumpiness under control, yet still stating with a heavy glare that crime should be solved during business hours. They rode in the sheriff's all-terrain vehicle out to Holden's cabin. They stood outside Holden's cabin. The cabin itself had sagged and partially collapsed from the explosion. The convoy of Regina vehicles had not been moved. As he looked on at the wreckage, the loss of the cabin weighed heavily on Holden. Althea sensed his feelings. "I'll miss it too," she said to him. "That cabin was the first taste of peace for me in such a long time. You put my well-being ahead of your own. You showed concern for me, not greed for my gifts." "I think I did it selfishly," Holden said, taking her in his arms. "Just for this perfect outcome, with my undercover angel." She looked up at him with a grin, playing on her lips. "You know I can read your general state, right? You're like an open book. I know how you feel without you saying it. And I feel the same way. If you please," the sheriff cut in on their moment, "we'll impound these vehicles. I've already ordered a search party. Our miners are well-trained and well-equipped. We'll find any survivors, and we'll lock them up. We'll file charges under local law. And we sent a message out system, but not to Regina. Not yet." Holden's gaze sharpened. "To who?" The sheriff's expression turned grim. "You too are still radioactive. I think the entire galaxy is probably on their way here. So we contact the Colonial Council. And to a few people who hate corporate overreach as much as I do." He paused. "And if you're Holden Zarrin," Holden tensed. The sheriff held up a hand. "I don't care about your fame," he said. "I care that you stopped men who've been terrorizing my town for years, and that you did it without killing anyone." His eyes flicked to Althea. "And I care that you sheltered someone who needed it." Holden's shoulders loosened, just slightly. The sheriff nodded. "You can stay," he said. "Both of you, under my protection. But you'll have to trust me." Trust was a dangerous word. Holden looked at Althea. She looked back at him, her fears still there, but tempered now by something new, hope that had a place to land. Holden made his choice. "Okay," he said. The days that followed weren't simple, but they were human. Holden and Althea were granted a vacant ranch outside of town, a ranch house that needed work but had good bones. They made it a home with hard work and dreams over the next few weeks. Holden and Althea worked as a team automatically. They fit like hand in glove. The ranch bloomed into a beautiful and cozy home. The Colonial Council left an enforcement ship in orbit, news organizations, Regina Corporation, scientists with university grants, general curiosity seekers, and others were not allowed to approach the planet. A debate raged across the galaxy. The news was out, a long-rumored legendary myth of an angel species in the form of a human-seeming woman. The colony town buzzed with rumors. People whisper about the convoy, about the corporation, about the night the bullies finally got hauled away. Some tried to connect Holden's face to old news feeds. Others didn't bother. The sheriff made it clear that anyone who tried to cause trouble would regret it. Althea stayed mostly in the cabin as much as she could. At night, they sat on the porch, drinking tea, talking about small things. And slowly, Althea began to talk about bigger ones. Her people, their flight through history. The way she'd watched one safe place after another become dangerous. The way she'd learned to never sleep in the same city twice. Holden listened, and he didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer empty promises. He offered presence, which was rarer and more valuable. In return, Althea learned Holden's silences. She learned about the freighter full of victims, about the alien traffickers, about the way he still woke, sometimes with his fists clenched, about the decision to refuse a prosthetic, because he didn't want to be remade into a symbol. I didn't want to be improved, he said, staring into his mug. I didn't want to be a symbol or elected to office. I wanted to be left alone. Althea's voice was gentle. And now, Holden looked up at her. The cabin lights made her hair glow softly. Her eyes were tired, but not haunted the way they had been that first night. Now, she looked like someone learning what it meant to belong somewhere. Holden's voice was quiet. Now I don't know, he admitted. The pieces have moved around the board. I have options. He grinned and looked at her. And I don't want options. Althea reached across the table, putting her hand on his. I hope you don't consider me an option. Huh? Why? Because I'm a sure thing now. Holden's smile was warm as he took her hand in both of his. If you only knew how long I've been waiting for you to say that. Later, the Colonial Council's response arrived. Official, stern, protective. Regina Corporation's retrieval request was denied pending investigation. Regina's presence without colonial permission was labeled a breach. Regina, for the first time in a long time, had been told no. It wouldn't last forever. Corporations didn't stop wanting what they wanted, but it bought time. And time, Holden had learned, was what survivors built futures from. One morning, Holden woke up and found his cane still leaning against the wall, untouched. He stood, tested his weight, and felt the healed strength in his left leg. A miracle that he was still getting used to. He looked toward the kitchen where Althea was humming again, making breakfast. Holden walked to her and rested a hand lightly on her shoulder. Althea looked up, smiling. Good morning. Holden swallowed, emotion catching unexpectedly in his chest. I need to tell you something, he said. Althea's smile faltered, worry flickering. Okay. Holden took a breath. I said I didn't want my leg healed, he said, and I meant it at the time. Althea's eyes widened slightly. Holden's gaze held hers, steady, earnest. I didn't want it healed because I thought the injury was the only thing keeping me honest, he said, keeping me real, keeping me from becoming the hero people wanted to own. Althea's lips parted, silent. Holden's voice softened. But you didn't heal me to own me, he said. You healed me because you couldn't stand to see someone hurt. Althea's eyes filled again. Holden. He shook his head. And I'm realizing something, he continued. The injury isn't who I am. The choice is. He paused. So, if you want to undo what you did, I won't stop you. But if you want to leave it, if you want to let me have this, I think I'm ready. Althea stared at him as if he'd just offered her something she'd never dared to imagine. Ready for what? She whispered. Holden's mouth curved into a small, careful smile. Ready to walk forward, he said. With you? Outside, the colony town's morning bells rang faintly in the distance. The wind moved through the trees. The world turned, stubborn and alive. Holden Zarrin, rescue or runaway, man who had tried to become a ghost, stood in the kitchen of a small cabin on a forgettable world, holding the gaze of a woman who had been hunted her whole life. And for the first time in a long time, both of them felt something neither of them had been able to steal from the universe by force. A future. Epilogue, The Last Guardian. It was a quiet night. Rain tapped gently against the cabin windows. Holden sat at the table with a mug of something warm cupped in both hands, listening to the familiar sounds of home that had stopped feeling temporary. Althea sat cross-legged on the floor near the hearth, wrapped in a blanket that looked too big for her, turning a small object in her fingers. It was smooth and pale like bone, except it wasn't bone. It caught the light wrong, as if it remembered stars. Holden watched her for a long moment. "You've been holding that a lot lately." Althea blinked, as if she'd forgotten she was holding anything at all. "I didn't mean to bring it out." "You don't have to hide it," he said. Althea's mouth twitched into a smile that didn't quite arrive. Old habits. Holden leaned back slightly, giving her space without leaving. "What is it?" Althea stared at the object. "A seed," she said softly. "Or a key. Depends on who's telling the story." Holden waited. Althea looked down again, thumb tracing a faint spiral etched into the pale surface. "Meaning there's a legend," she whispered. "A story my people told each other when the nights were long and the world felt too heavy." Holden didn't interrupt. He had learned that Althea's truths came like sun through clouds, slow, uneven, and worth the wait. I focused, I meditated. I even managed to get memory enhancement drugs from the local doctor. Holden's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Okay, much has come back to me. I'm not alone. I wasn't abandoned. My tribe, my species, they left me with purpose. A mission." Holden sat very still. "That means they are still out there?" Althea nodded slowly. "Or they became something else. Or they died." Her voice tightened. "But the legend says they left one behind." Holden's gaze sharpened. "Why?" Althea's fingers trembled. "A tether," she whispered. "A safety line. Someone to hold the stone dormant until the world was ready. Someone to watch for the moment humans learned restraint. Someone to close the door behind them properly if they had to." Holden frowned. "But why you?" Althea's eyes went wet. "Because my mother was part of the convergence circle," she said, voice cracking. "And I was a child, too young to step through safely." She laughed once, bitter and soft. "Or, that's what they told me. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was strategy. Maybe it was punishment. Maybe my mother believed I would be better at surviving humans than she was." Holden's chest tightened. Althea stared at the fire. "There's one more part," she said, barely audible. "The legend says the last guardian wouldn't just wait. She would learn. She would suffer. She would understand humanity's cruelty and humanity's capacity for kindness." Her eyes lifted to Holden. "And when she found a human who didn't want to own her gift, she would know the door could be open again." The room went quiet. Outside, the rain kept tapping. Holden's voice came gently. "Are you saying me? You needed me, and you didn't even know it?" Althea nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks without her wiping them away. "I didn't know it," she whispered. "I thought I was just unlucky." Her fingers tightened around the stone. "But then I met you." Holden's throat worked. "How did we end up in the same place? It seems impossible. This town, this planet, are so remote, so unremarkable. Most of the galaxy doesn't know we exist." Althea smiled shakily. "No," she said. "Some power put us together. Like you said, Holden, it's a logical deduction." Holden shook his head, the concept so big that he couldn't truly understand. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "If your people stepped into this, thread place can we follow?" Althea's gaze flicked to the stone. "Maybe," she said. "The stone is dormant now. It hasn't been awakened in centuries. But," she hesitated, "when I healed you, I felt something. Like the spiral woke up a little. Like it recognized the pattern I was using." Holden tapped his fingers once, mind already shifting into planning mode. "We'd need a safe place to try," he said. "Not here, not within Regina's reach." Althea nodded. "And we'd need to know where the thread is strongest." Holden's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Deep space, magnetic anomalies, pulsars, old survey data." Althea blinked. "You're already making a list." Holden glanced at her, and his expression softened into something warmer. "I'm good at two things," he said quietly. "Finding people who can't be found, and getting them out alive. If your tribe is out there, I'll find them." Althea looked at him like she couldn't quite believe she was allowed to have this. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying," he told her, "we're wasting time. We have a lost tribe to find." Althea's breath caught. "Holden." He took her hands gently, careful, grounding. You don't have to be the last, he said. Not if I can help it. Besides, while I love this ranch and plan on keeping it, I rather like the idea of being a moving target. If we are searching out in the galaxy, we'll be harder to find. Her eyes searched his face, and he saw fear there. The fear of hoping and losing. The fear of believing in a legend and being crushed by reality. I don't even know where to start, she said. Holden smiled, small and steady. I do, he said. He stood and crossed to a shelf where an old, dust-covered star chart tablet sat, something he'd bought because it looked harmless, nostalgic. He powered it up. The hollow projection bloomed over the table. A map of nearby systems, trade routes, survey markers. Holden began highlighting points. Magnetic anomalies, abandoned stations, dead corridors in the warp lanes where instrumentation always went strange. Althea watched, slowly sitting up straighter as the map filled with possibilities. We'll need a ship, she said, voice tentative. Holden's eyes gleamed with a quiet, dangerous amusement. I know where to get one. Althea frowned. Legally? Holden's grin widened a fraction. My organization will give me anything I ask for. Just picture the fastest, stealthiest, most advanced ship the galaxy has to offer. And my old team, many of whom will jump at the chance to sign up for this mission. The best crew in this universe or any other. Althea stared at him for a long moment, then, unexpectedly, laughed. It came out shaky at first, then clearer, like a bell finding its tone. Holden watched her laugh, like it was the most precious thing he'd ever stolen from a universe. Althea leaned forward and rested her forehead against his shoulder. Holden looked down at the stone in his hand. But if the legends are true, he said, then maybe the universe isn't just hunger and cruelty. Maybe it leaves doors. Althea nodded. And maybe it leaves people. Holden nodded once. Then we go, he said. Althea stood, wiping her cheeks, and in her posture Holden saw something new. Still cautious, still scarred, but no longer cornered. She looked at the star map, and then at him. Out to the stars, she said. Holden's smile was quiet, fierce, and impossibly gentle all at once. Out to the stars, he agreed, and in the soft hum of the cabin systems, in the steady rain against the glass, in the pale spiral of the stone resting in his palm, there was the faintest sense of something aligning, like the universe itself had shifted a fraction, making room for their next step. Not a miracle, a choice, a beginning.